"Sir, we don't allow this kind of material here," the receptionist said. "Is there a problem here?" asked the taller security guard. "No," she replied with a sigh, clearly annoyed. "This gentleman was just leaving." The library guard glanced at the worn journal in the old veteran's wrinkled hands, then crossed his arms and nodded toward the door. Elliot clutched the journal to his chest, his eyes filled with tears. What they didn't know was that he had managed to leave behind a note, one that would soon land in the hands of the library's director, and that would change everything. Let's dive into this story. Elliot Barnes's alarm goes off early, but he's already awake before the first beep. His house in Evanston, Illinois is small and old, built in 1979. He helped lay part of the foundation himself, right after coming back from the war. In the kitchen, the kettle heats slowly. He pours coffee into a handleless mug and sits at the table. Morning sunlight filters through the curtain, casting trembling shadows across the tablecloth. On the wall across from him, 2 framed pictures, one from his wedding with Lily, and one of his battalion, taken overseas. The journal was always there. Brown cover, crooked spine, pages worn by time. More than 40 years of notes, names, tiny memories, loved jazz, devoted husband, laughed out loud when it rained. Stories that exist nowhere else. That journal was the one habit time never took from him. Now 87, his doctor had been blunt. His heart was tired. "Avoid strong emotions," he said. Elliot just nodded. But that morning, as he turned the final page, he felt something different. It was time. Those stories couldn't stay with him forever. The next morning, Elliot woke up before the sun. It was still dark when he quietly slipped on his shoes, as if Lily were still sleeping in the next room. He carefully wrote a short note, folded the paper, and tucked it inside the journal's cover. Then he wrapped the journal in a neatly folded white handkerchief, slid it back into the inside pocket of his coat. He made a weak cup of coffee and forced down half a piece of toast. Everything tasted like nothing. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, looked at himself in the hallway mirror, and barely recognized the man staring back. His face looked thinner, more tired. He grabbed his cap and stepped outside. The walk to the university was familiar, though he hadn't been there in years. The campus was quiet, still empty. A few students were arriving, some in a hurry, others with earbuds in, paying no attention to the old man slowly walking down the wide stone path. The main library building looked larger than he remembered. Dark glass, automatic doors, a large atrium just inside, where a young woman sat behind a desk, typing nonstop. 2 security guards stood nearby. One was sipping from a thermal cup. The other watched Elliot approach with suspicion. "Good morning. My name is Elliot Barnes," he said, stopping in front of the desk. The woman didn't even look up. "Yes? I brought a journal. I've been writing in it for decades, stories from my years of service. It's all written here." He gently touched the handkerchief. "I'd like to leave it with you, so it doesn't get lost." This time she looked at him, first confused, then hurried. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I thought maybe someone could accept. Are you registered with us?" "No." "Then I'm sorry. We can't accept anything directly like that. There's a protocol, especially with handwritten materials." The taller guard stepped closer. "Is there a problem here?" "No," she sighed, annoyed. "This gentleman was just leaving." "Wait," Elliot said, raising the journal in both hands. "This matters. These are records, stories of the men I served with. There's a lot in here." "Sir, we don't accept this type of material," the receptionist said firmly. The university security guard looked at the worn journal in the veteran's wrinkled hands with contempt, crossed his arms, and pointed toward the exit with his chin. Elliot held the journal close to his chest, his eyes glassy. Others had started to notice. A group of students stood by the entrance, stealing glances. 2 professors passed by and slowed down. The receptionist turned and began dialing the phone. One of the guards gently touched Elliot's arm. "It's okay, sir. Someone can come pick you up if needed." Elliot hesitated. The handkerchief still covered the journal, but now his hands were shaking. The words wouldn't come. For 40 years he had prepared those pages, and now he couldn't form a single sentence. As he headed toward the exit, he spotted a young intern named Ben, organizing books on a shelf. Elliot walked over to him and quietly said before reaching the door, "Please, young man, give this note to the director. It's my last hope." The automatic doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. The cold outside cut straight to the bone. Elliot walked with short, careful steps. He passed the stone steps, crossed the garden, and sat on a bench near the street. Slowly, he placed the journal on his knees and stayed there for a few minutes. Still, cars passed in the distance, and for a moment, he considered leaving the journal right there, on the bench. Maybe someone would read it, maybe not. But he didn't leave it. He chose to go home instead. The walk back home felt longer. The wind cut through the corners of the streets, sweeping dry leaves across the sidewalks. Elliot walked slowly, one hand in his pocket, the other clutching the journal tightly to his chest. He didn't look around. He felt invisible. On the train, he chose a corner seat by the window. The reflection in the glass showed a hunched figure, smaller than he remembered. His hands, weathered by time, rested on the brown cover, now slightly damp from the mist in the air. When he got home, he hung up his coat and sat in the armchair near the bookshelf. Outside, the sky was growing darker. He placed the journal on his lap, ran his fingers along its worn edges, and opened it to the middle page. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath. The images from the page came so clearly. It was as if he were reliving the moment. Longing knocked gently at the door. The clock on the wall read 3:12 p.m. He thought about calling someone, but there was no one left to call. His friends were gone. Lily was gone. The memories in that journal were all he had left. In the kitchen, he made a weak cup of tea, sat down at the table, placed the journal in the center, next to the wedding photo in its frame. "There," Elliot whispered. "I tried, my love. I took it there. They didn't want it." He stared at the journal for a long while, then closed his eyes, thinking about what he had written in the note he gave that young man at the library. Outside, the world kept moving, but in that narrow living room in Evanston, time seemed to have stopped. And in that stillness, Elliot thought of only one thing. If no one else cared about those stories, maybe they were meant to be buried with him. Late in the afternoon, while Elliot sat in silence, something unusual was happening on the other side of town. Inside the university's archive room, Emma Callahan, director and assistant curator of the historical collection, was typing up the last reports of the week. She was 39, with reading glasses slipping down her nose and a stack of forms waiting for her signature. She barely noticed the time passing. That's when an intern approached, holding a crumpled piece of paper. "Emma, sorry to bother you, but there was a bit of an incident this morning at the front desk. An elderly man tried to donate something, a journal. They said it caused a bit of confusion." She looked up. "And? Well, he gave me a note, asked me to pass it along to someone in charge. I was working, so this is the first chance I had to bring it." Emma let out a quiet sigh, took the note, and read it. "If someone finds this journal one day, please read it carefully. None of the memories in these names should be forgotten. I promised I'd remember for all of us." "And the journal?" Emma asked. Ben hesitated. "He didn't leave it. It was wrapped in a white cloth. I saw it in his hands. But in the end, he took it back." "He took it?" "Yeah, said it was his last hope. Then he left. No phone number, no address, just that note." Emma stayed quiet for a few moments, then folded the note and tucked it carefully away. She headed down to the main lobby. The front area was calm. 2 security guards stood chatting near the door. The same receptionist from that morning sat behind the desk, typing. Emma walked over. "Good afternoon. This morning, an elderly gentleman came in. He tried to donate a journal." "Oh, yes." The receptionist looked away. "We handled it." "What was his name?" "Elliot Barnes." "Did he leave anything behind?" "No. He kept the journal with him the entire time. It was wrapped in some kind of white cloth. He insisted, but since he didn't have an appointment, Emma raised her hand gently to interrupt. "It's fine, thank you." She turned around and walked back up the stairs to the archive office, sat at her desk, opened her laptop, typed, "Elliot Barnes." She searched carefully, trying to find an address in the city. Then she stood, grabbed her coat, and slid the note into her pocket. As she walked to her car, the late afternoon air was starting to cool. And as the campus faded behind her, she had a clear feeling. If she didn't go now, there might not be another chance. It was past 7 when Elliot heard the doorbell. He was sitting in his armchair, a blanket over his knees, and the journal still tucked inside the coat hanging on the chair in front of him. He wasn't expecting anyone. He couldn't even remember the last time someone rang the bell at that hour. He stood up slowly, opened the door with care. A woman stood there, her cheeks red from the cold, holding a piece of paper. She smiled kindly. "Mr. Barnes?" "Yes. My name is Emma Callahan. I'm a curator at the university library." "I came because of this," she said, holding up the note. Elliot recognized it before she said another word. "That young man actually gave it to you?" he asked, almost surprised. Emma nodded. "He told me you gave it to him before you left. I read it, and something about it felt too important to ignore." "And how did you find my address?" "I searched public records. Took some effort, I admit, but here I am," Emma said with a soft smile. Elliot looked down. "I didn't think anyone would care." "I did." "Do you still have the journal?" she asked gently. He walked over to the chair, took the coat, pulled out the journal, still wrapped in the white handkerchief, handed it to her without saying a word. Emma held it as if it weighed more than it looked. She stayed quiet as she opened it, flipped through a few pages. "This needs to be seen, Elliot. It needs to be preserved the right way for everyone you wrote about, and for you too." Elliot nodded, just barely. "For a long time I thought this journal only made sense to me." "It'll make sense to all of us," Emma replied. 2 days later, she returned to Elliot's home with an archivist. They informed him the journal would be restored, digitized, and featured as a centerpiece in a new exhibition honoring veterans. The following week, a simple ceremony was held at the library's main entrance. Elliot was there, wore the dark jacket Lily had given him years ago. He walked in quietly. He didn't speak, just stood in front of the display case, gazing at the journal. Emma watched from a distance. She didn't interrupt. Elliot stood there for a few minutes, looking at the thing he had carried for 4 decades. Then he turned to Emma and smiled. It was a small smile, but full of peace. At the end of the ceremony, Emma walked him to the door. "Do you still write?" she asked. "No." "Do you plan to start again?" Elliot paused for a moment, then replied, voice low, "I think I've finally finished." That night he came home and took off his coat slowly, looked at the shelf where the journal used to sit. Now there was an empty space. He settled into the armchair, pulled the blanket over himself, and fell asleep in silence, no longer carrying the weight alone, but finally having shared it with the world. For the first time in decades, he fell asleep knowing what he had carried was now in good hands. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next.